Hey everybody, it's your girl Jeannie, aka Flossie. I hope y'all enjoyed the first video of my testimony, and I'm going to continue it today about my testimony. Like I said in my last video, my bishop touched me on Wednesday Bible study night that everybody that comes in, you know, they have a story, a testimony that can possibly help somebody else, and they never share it. And so this is part of my series that I'm trying to share my testimony. I have a lot to give thanks to God about and to talk about. But before I start today, I want to start on a note of I want you to listen to something. And I hope to be inspiration. And it's going to tie into what I'm going to say today, part of my testimony. And it took a while for me to see and understand a lot of things. So I hope you enjoy.
Tamika Scott. Yeah. As we take this journey through life, we face trials and tribulations. But just know, the enemy is not gonna win. Cause the storm is almost over. That's right. The storm is almost over.
Don't you give up. You come too far to turn back now. Hold your head up. It's almost over. So set up to take you to your destiny. It's gonna be alright. Everything happens for a reason. Just this is your season. Just keep on believing. Blessings you'll be receiving. Oh yeah, oh yeah. It will be alright. Throw your hands to the sky, lift your head up high. The storm is almost over. Everything's gonna work in your favor. You don't have to worry no more. What you're going through won't last. It's a test to take you higher. Just keep the faith, hold on, baby. So it's almost keep moving.
And I'm going to end it on that note. Like you heard in the song, everything that you go through life is a setup to get you to your destiny. And you always think the storm is going to rage for a long, long time. But the storm don't last always. And to get back to my testimony, yesterday you heard me talk about my illness, the sickness that I overcome. Today I'm going to talk about, I may overcame my sickness, but at that point in time, I never noticed where God was and what the miracle really was at that moment in time in my life. I'm going to give you a little backstory about me. I was lost at that moment in time. I was really, 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 really lost. And like I said, I'm going to give you a backstory. Like I said yesterday, I was raised by my grandparents. And the circumstances for me being raised by my grandparents is because I was being abused by my stepfather. And my grandparents had to get custody of me. And, as a child, you don't really understand certain things. As you get older, you start, you yearn for your mom, you yearn for your dad. And, I had questions, where was my father, and I felt like my mom choose that man than her child. So I was going through so much, me thinking, the sickness and then I was married. You heard me talk about I was married, and everything that it hit me all at once. I was lost. I didn't know who to talk to, how to talk to somebody, and where to turn. And everybody said, oh, you go to your church, you go to anything. Like I said, I didn't like nobody in my business. And so for a minute, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I locked myself at work. When I got better, I started working a lot. I didn't focus on my marriage. I'm going to speak on my marriage, and I'm not here to put him down or badmouth him. I'm only speaking for myself and my own personal experience in that marriage. And it's nothing to pertain to him because he's on his own journey himself. So with me, I got married at age of 25, and I shouldn't have never got married at that moment in time. But the choices that I made, because I got pregnant in college, and then I met my then husband and got pregnant, and most traditions and most families feel as though when you get pregnant, you gotta get married. And I got married for all the wrong reasons. But once I got married, I loved my husband. I loved him. I loved him. I loved him. But when two broken people get together, it's not a good thing. He needed to heal from something, and I needed to grow and heal from what I was going through. And when my sickness came upon, it intensified it a lot more, and I was lost. In my mind, I thought I was a good wife. Back then I didn't know the definition and what it really meant to be a wife. But I know now, after spending time with God and growing a little bit more, I know what it means to be a wife. Back then I did not know, and I didn't think he knew what, in God's eyes, what it was to be a husband either. Most men think to just be a provider and that's it, that you don't have to take time and date your wife or make your wife feel special. Because if you don't date your wife, you leave opportunity. No matter if she's a good woman, bad woman, whatever, you leave the door opportunity for the Satan or things to seek into your marriage. And fellas, if you ever hear your woman plead to you, listen, really listen, take time and listen, because she's not complaining or asking for time with you just because. But within my marriage, we'll get back to it. I pleaded to my husband. I saw after I got sick that he didn't love me the way I thought he did. And he didn't make me feel like a woman. And I was searching to feel like a woman to the wrong person, because I was already empty inside, because I was already dealing with daddy issues like abandonment. So I was holding on to something because somebody let me go a long time ago, and I thought it was the best thing for me to do. I was just scared. I was really scared. And it took a point one day that I had to let that marriage go. I had to let it go. I knew he didn't love me. And the thing that stuck out to me, he told me one day, he said he knew the day I fell out of love with him. But not once did he try to save us. He let it go. And in that marriage, I was stressed out. I was just going through a lot. And, the sickness intensified it. Like I said, the sickness intensified, and I left my husband. I left. But there's other things that took place, and he promised me that I would never share it with anybody that took place. And, and I know my son don't want me to share it either, that took place. But there was things that took place within one of my kids that I had to mentally deal with, and only people that was close to me knew what I was going through. And when you've been abused, molested, and everything, you think you're there to protect your child, and you catch it because you've been through it. It's not always the case. Because when you're broken and you're so caught up, you always sometimes miss the signs. And that's what happened with me. I missed the signs. And when I missed the signs, and when my child cried out, I punished myself. I punished myself big time. I started drinking. Now, God just blessed me. I came over a sickness. I started drinking. I started going out partying. I started doing things that I shouldn't do, point blank. And it took a toll. When my son even thought, I didn't even love him because I was so caught up in my own self. My kids, they did. They thought I was lost. I was lost until one day, my cousin, and everybody thought she was my road dog, but she still is. She's my bestie. She's my spiritual sister. But she came into my life. She came into my life. And when I remember I told you in my last video that God send you angels. And I explained to you what angels are to me, are people. She was my angel. She was there when I was going through it. I was out there partying, drinking. God knows I'm glad I didn't, I never want to do drugs, smoke marijuana, none of that. But, partying, I was just spiraling out of control. I was just out there because I was beating up myself and I didn't know nowhere to turn and who to talk to. And she came into my life and I ended up moving in with her. And she said to me, she said, Flossie, she said, in order to stay in my house, you got to go to church. This is where God worked in. God, he'll allow you to be in the world, go through everything. Like the song said, the things that you go through is a setup for your destiny. And, since I stayed in her house, I abide by her rules, and I went to church with her. And I went to Word of God Christian Center in New Bern. And when I went in there, Bishop there, it was like he was reading my story. It was like he could feel my pain. And just everything that I was going through, like I had turned my back because I didn't know how to handle anything because I'm so used to people pushing me away or using me. I was so used to that. And so more and more I went to church and I went to Bible study and my cousins kept talking to me. And then I was working hard, with me still out in the world, I was working hard and I was trying to change my life around. And it seems like every time I would make 2 steps forward, I always got pushed back 2 steps back. And I kept crying and I was like, she came to my job and was like, girl, why is my life this way? Why is it this, going on? Every time I try to push forward, it seems like I keep getting knocked down. And I just cried and I cried. Then one day I couldn't take it anymore. I really couldn't take it anymore. And I was going to commit suicide. I had it planned. I had my life insurance planned out. I had everything that my kids are taken care of, everything. And I'm going to tell you how God worked on this situation for me. There was this man came into the store, and I was working at Aaron's in New Bern. And he said the steering wheel in his car turned that way. He was trying to go somewhere else, but the car brought him to my job. So, and now when I'm telling you, this is a big, heavy-set man, sweating, barely could walk into Aaron's. And he's telling me this. So I said, well, sir, I welcome you here, and come on, let me show you around. So he said, all right. And when I tell you this man could barely walk, he couldn't barely walk in there at all. And so I showed him back to the TV, showed him some, first before, I'm moving a little bit too fast, I showed him some furniture, and then I moved him back there to the TVs. And as I'm back there to the TVs, and we were sitting there talking, and he turns to me, he said, God hears all your thoughts, out of the blue. And I said, excuse me? He said, God hears everything you think and what you're going to do. And I looked at him because y'all don't know, I was going to commit suicide that very night. I was getting ready to end everything because I couldn't take it anymore. And I looked at him and he said, you know, God hears everything. He said, but I'm going to stay with you until you leave. Remember I said God send you angels, he send you people. God was speaking to that man, and he was talking through that man to let me know that he was listening to what I was saying, and that I'm not by myself when I thought I was alone. So he stayed with me until we closed up errands, and then he gave me a hug, and he went on back his business. And my cousin was like, who is that man, when I got in the truck with her? And I told her, I said, an angel. And she said, why? I broke down in the truck and started crying. I said, you know, I got to share something. I was about to commit suicide tonight. I had got all my ducks in a row and make sure my kids were taken care of, you know, money wise. I said, but I'm getting ready to leave. I can't deal with life is throwing at me right now. I couldn't deal with it. And I cried and she cried with me. She said, no, Jeannie, she said, storms don't last always, Jeannie. She said, you're just going through something. She said, the day you sat out there and told me every time you move forward and you get knocked back, she said, that's just God setting you up for the greatest comeback of your life. And she hugged me and she said, you know what? We're going to go to the altar on Sunday and we're going to lay it down and give it to God. So we went to church that Sunday, and it was again, Bishop was like, he was speaking. It was like, how did you know my thoughts? How did you, was you in there in my room when I was writing my stuff? And I finally, you know what, I gave myself to God. And he told me, he said, you must have been up here a long time ago. I said, no, I kept holding out. And he said, you can't hold out for God. You can't hold out. But it took that man to open my eyes up. That God is always listening. I didn't pay attention to when I was going through my sickness. I was still in the world, that God still had his hold on me. He still loved me. He seen something great in me that I don't even see in myself. And he still believed in me. Now that I look back at today, what happened to me in 2011, 2012, it was a setup. It was a setup from God. And there was something that I learned from him talking to me. He said, I had to affect you so you could help my sons and daughters. And I, you know, when he told me that, and I laughed and I said, whatever, God, whatever. But more and more I sit back and I look at my brothers and sisters and they're going through it. So many of us are committing suicide because they feel as though there's nobody to talk to. I understand. I was there myself. I felt like I couldn't talk to nobody. My world was going. I was pushing forward. I was fighting. And still nothing was happening. But God sent an angel in my direction to remind me, I hear you, daughter. I'm here. So sometimes, like I said earlier, got to pay attention to your angels. Because he sends them in the weirdest ways. He used kids. He used elderly. He'll use anybody to get to you. Anybody. And that man got to me. Well, this part of my video was basically about talking about suicide. And I know I began to talk about my marriage, but I had to aim towards suicide. Because nowadays it's real. If you see somebody depressed, sit with them and talk to them. God will put it on your shoulders and make you feel when somebody is going through, and share that word with them. Let them know they're not alone, because they feel they are. Because you never know what somebody's going through day by day. Like I said, I'm doing a 10 video series of my testimony. I hope it reaches somebody. And I hope you see that God is real, that he works in the most mysterious, oh my goodness, ways. And the more that you hear my testimony and things, because I have a lot, and I'm telling you, it's going to sound like a movie. It's going to sound like a movie, and I said that in my very last video. I'm going to explain why it's called The Road to Redemption. So everybody, y'all have a blessed one. I see you till my next video.